Donald Trump decided to basically implement martial law in Washington, D.C. No, that's not technically what he did, but that is what he appears to be gearing up to do. He is sending in the National Guard to clean up the streets in Washington, D.C., because the nation's capital is apparently a crime ridden hellscape, which, of course, is not true. The evidence says everything to the contrary. But since there are a lot of black people that live in Washington, D.C., Donald Trump has the perception of it being dirty, disgusting, and crime ridden. He also federalized the DC, what is it? The I forget the actual name, but the Washington DC police force. Pam Bondi, that dipshit, is now in charge of an entire police force. Pete Hegseth has jurisdiction in this as well. It's so bad. Washington D.C. should not be subject to this. They of course have no rights because they are in a state, unfortunately. So they're going to get over by the president and all of his dipshit, all of his dipshit cronies. But it's what could potentially happen down the line. Donald Trump in this press conference we're going to watch specifically mentions doing similar things in Chicago, Oakland, LA, New York, implementing the National Guard, which is tremendously fucking insane and immensely frightening that the sitting president would even think to do this under whatever ridiculous justification he thinks it may be, like crime is out of control, which again is a lie. And we will discuss this as the interview or as his press conference goes on. Implementing the National Guard in red states, they're going to do whatever the fuck Donald Trump says because they're cucks anyway. But the specific targeting of cities and of cities within blue states, all because they won't go along with what the president says, is fucking insane. The only time that should even be in consideration is if the leaders of these cities are going against federal law. But if there's no law for them to break, what the fuck is the justification?
I've been up here a lot. I've never seen
nightmare blunt rotation right here. If I had to take a flight with all 7 of these motherfuckers, I would kill myself. I would jump out of the goddamn plane if I had to sit next to an alcoholic, Janine Pirro, a freak, Kash Patel, a dumb bitch, Pam Bondi, and yeah, I'm going to call her a dumb bitch because that's what she is. This fucking smelly goofball Donald Trump, a DUI haver, multiple time DUI haver, Pete Hegseth, this oralist, charismaless loser Doug Burgum, and I don't even know who the fuck this guy is. Who let him, like, who is this? JD Vance wasn't even here. He was busy in fucking England.
In a crowd like this, I think we need a ballroom, and that's happening. It's going to be a beautiful ballroom. This is really a lot of people, most I've ever seen in this room. And we're here for a very serious purpose, very serious purpose. Something's out of control, but we're going to put it in control very quickly like we did on the southern border. I'm announcing a historic action to rescue our nation's capital from crime, bloodshed, bedlam, and squalor, and worse. This is Liberation Day in D.C., and we're going to take our capital back. We're taking it back. Under the authorities vested in me as the President of the United States, I'm officially invoking Section 740 of the District of Columbia Home Rule Act. You know what that is? And placing the D.C. Metropolitan Police Department under direct federal control, and you'll be meeting the people that will be directly involved with that. Very good people, but they're tough, and they know what's happening, and they've done it before. In addition, I'm deploying the National Guard to help reestablish law, order, and public safety in Washington, D.C., and they're going to be allowed to do their job properly. And you people are victims of it, too. You know, you're reporters, and I understand a lot of you tend to be on the liberal side, but you know.
He says do their job properly because the National Guard, when they were deployed to LA, for example, they weren't allowed to fucking do anything because it's not their jurisdiction. They were basically only allowed to stand outside of federal buildings and make sure that nothing happened there because California has sovereignty as an actual state. Washington, D.C. does not have any of these protections, which is why it is the perfect starting ground for the dumbest fascist takeover of all time. You have 7 dipshits trying to orchestrate this. Donald Trump, of these 7 people who are standing here, is the smartest person, and that was done intentionally. My hope is that the incompetence becomes too overbearing, and like none of these people know how to govern whatever respective task that they're given. That's the only hope I have in this situation, is that Pam Bondi resigns because she doesn't know how to be the head of a police department because she's an idiot.
Want to get, you don't want to get mugged and raped and shot and killed, and you all know people and friends of
Bro,
yours.
you're a rapist. Pete Hegseth is a fucking rapist. The people of Washington, D.C. are more likely to be raped by the fucking president than some civilian. That's an insane thing to say. That is an absolutely insane thing to say.
That happened, and so you can be anything you want, but you want to have safety in the streets. You want to be able to leave your apartment or your house where you live and feel safe and go into a store to buy a newspaper or buy something. And you don't have that now. The murder rate in Washington today is higher than that of Bogota, Colombia, Mexico City, some of the places that you hear about.
He's being racist when talking about Washington, D.C. He's going to show a chart later. I think he's going to show a chart. I don't remember if it's in this or if it was something I saw online. But one of the pieces of information that he gave to the press was murder rates. Comparing Washington, D.C. to only Latin American cities to highlight how quote unquote lawless it is. Meanwhile, he's trying to fucking paint these Latin American cities as being infested with murderers when all of them have strikingly low homicide rates. Even Washington, D.C.'s homicide rate isn't extraordinarily high. On this graphic here, down 12%. Sex abuse, down 49%. Assault with a dangerous weapon, 20% down. Robbery, down 28%. Every fucking crime is down precipitously in Washington, D.C. What Donald Trump is doing, the militarization of, or the mobilization of the military and the federalization of the police, is grossly unjustified, and it's dangerous. It's dangerous because there are other ways for you to tackle crime without just turning Washington, D.C. into North Korea. Go meet with Mayor Brandon Scott, Baltimore Mayor Brandon Scott. He's one state over. He has also reduced crime tremendously in Baltimore, but he's done so by way of community outreach, by organizing events so that way you don't have youth offenders, by cooperating with the police department so that way the police can actually solve these crimes, and improving relationships with the community and the police. Anyone who tries to talk about tackling crime and refuses to acknowledge the socioeconomic reasons as to why crime occurs is an unserious actor. They're an unserious actor. They're not interested in actually figuring out ways to reduce crime. More policing does not reduce crime. Police are a reactive approach to crime. They are not proactive. The way that you stop crime from happening is tackling the source, which in most instances is poverty. It doesn't matter if it's crime in rural America, if it's crime in urban America, if it's crime in big cities or crime in small cities. The more poverty that exists, the more likely it is that crime is going to occur. You solve crime by improving people's material conditions, by building up and reinvesting in these communities.
As being the worst places on earth, much higher. This is much higher. The number of car thefts has doubled over the past 5 years, and the number of carjackings has more than tripled. Murders in 2023 reached the highest rate probably ever. They say 25 years, but they don't know what that means because it just goes back 25 years. Can't be worse. Our capital city.
They don't know what that means. Some would think that when you see a chart that says it goes back 25 years, you would think that means 25 years, but no one actually knows how far ago 25 years actually was. If you think about it, time is made up. Time is a human construct, and Donald Trump, exist beyond humanity, so I don't believe in actual perceived time.
He has been overtaken by violent gangs and bloodthirsty criminals, roving mobs of wild youth, drugged out maniacs and homeless people, and we're not going to let it happen
He's
anymore.
just describing his administration. Come on, man. Like, the joke writes itself. he, he's talking about January 6th.
Or we're not going to take it. Just like we did on our southern border. Nobody comes to our southern border anymore. 3 months in a row, we had zero. I don't know if that's right, but
That's
the people that
definitely
do the
not
work, it's a very liberal group of people, actually, and they actually said zero for the last 3 months. Nobody thought a thing like that was possible. And, when you take a look at numbers, I just saw some charts. These are different cities throughout the world. Red is, okay, the red is a place called Washington, D.C. Look at these. Baghdad we doubled up on Baghdad. Panama City, Brasilia, San Jose, Costa Rica, Bogota, Colombia, heavy drugs.
Heavy drugs? Oh, yeah? Bogota, Colombia. They have heavy drugs down there. I've never participated in drugs, but I did actually used to get Sudafed from the UK because there's this little thing called amphetamines inside of it. It's just so fucking insane that this is real life. I cannot comprehend that I'm living through this. I'm just being real. I'm being real. I knew that Trump 2 was going to be bad, and it's bad, but it's just like aesthetically an absolute fucking disaster. It's an absolute fucking disaster. It's like one of those rare instances where the aesthetics of the situation match like the actual substantive impact. It's both just horrific. You have this fucking buffoon in the fucking Oval Office talking about heavy drugs in Colombia. Like, what fucking timeline is this, man? This is hell. It's gotta be hell.
Mexico City, I mentioned, Lima, Peru, all double and triple what they are. So do you want to live in places like that? I don't think so. I don't think so. And I think the people in this room, if you wrote
Bro, do you want to live in places like that? Well, apparently, if the murder rate is twice as low, you're making it seem like it's safer to live there. What the fuck is this comparison? Obviously, this information is cherry picked because if you picked other cities within the United States, it would probably be more comparable. The reason why there are more homicides in the United States of America than like virtually every other fucking country is because there's more guns here. There's more opportunity for people to commit homicides. It's easier to kill somebody with a gun than a knife. It's math.
correctly, you'd see, look at the kind of numbers we have. DC, 41 per 100,000, number one that we can find anywhere in the world. Other cities are pretty bad, but they're not as bad as that. That where you want to live? The reporters of the world? Juvenile offenders and crimes against persons, as they say. It's getting worse. Not getting better, it's getting worse. And we had a recent indication. There was a story about a man who was just left. He quit because he was asked to do phony numbers on crime. And we're going to look into that. I think Pam is going to be looking into that. But he was asked by the city, I guess, that we don't want to show the real numbers. Let me do numbers so it looks like it's going down. Not going down. And under Biden, it was a disaster. And nobody did anything about it. We're going to do things about it like you wouldn't believe. It's time for...
There is actual reason as to why Washington, D.C. has elevated crime levels compared to other major cities. One of them being there is tremendous wealth inequality in Washington, D.C. I don't know if it has the largest in terms of wealth inequality, but it is certainly up there. The wealthy people in Washington, D.C. earn, I think, like I think it's, what is it? The median income for, now, what was the number I saw? It was like, I don't know if it was white median income for white people versus black people, but it was like 3 or 4 times higher. There are there is an immense concentration of wealthy people in Washington, D.C., largely because of, guess what? Fucking Congress. When you have Washington, when you have such grotesque wealth inequality, and you have a government who is unwilling to invest in these surrounding communities, people are going to resort to crime. Again, it all tracks back to poverty. If you just taxed these rich assholes a little bit more and took that revenue and used it to fund schools, to reinvest in these communities by way of allowing people to open small businesses, parks, pools, shit like that, people wouldn't have to go out and do crime. It also points to just the deteriorating conditions for the 99% all throughout the United States of America.
Dramatic action. We're going to do the same thing over here. It's going to be a very safe city very soon. We're not looking to take years, because a lot of people die in years, and we've got incredible people in this country, except we have to allow them to do their job. And that we will.
I want Pam Bondi to imprison every black person who lives in Washington, D.C., every single one of them, including, but not limited to, Jasmine Crockett. I think that Washington, D.C. would be a lot safer if Pam Bondi was allowed to be racist on the timeline.
Like nobody's ever delivered before. I actually think it's easy. You know, if you're competent, it's easy. If you're incompetent, it's impossible. But I'm very competent. Last week, my administration surged 500 federal agents into the district, including from the FBI, ATF, DEA, Park Police, the U.S. Marshal Service, the Secret Service, and the Department of Homeland Security. You know, a lot of nations, they don't have anything like that. They got some police.
What?
And they're rough police.
What the fuck does that mean? The United States is the only country that has government agencies. Maybe because, you know, most countries, you're right, they don't have redundant agencies. The U.S. not only has the fucking Customs and Border Patrol, but we have ICE as well. That is a fucking redundant agency. That's because other world governments aren't so fucking stupid. Like, dude, I was just in Switzerland the other day. I could not believe that they didn't have 13 immigration agencies. I'm like, what are you doing? Why do you not have all of this redundancy?
We have DEA, ATF, FBI, Park Police, the U.S. Marshal Service, Secret Service, Department of Homeland Security. They got some police, but they're rough police, and they do their job. They don't have crime.
Bro, this guy does not know anything. In France, the fucking police officers don't even carry guns. What do you mean they're rough police? In France, you can fight the fucking police. Like, not really, but they don't have crime. The reason why other countries don't have crime is because they have robust social safety nets in place, right? People can go to people can get health care. There's affordable housing. People have high-paying jobs. People have union jobs. That's why crime is not quote-unquote rampant in other countries. It's because the government actually looks after the well-being of its citizens. It's not because they're allowed to do police brutality. What the fuck?
We're not going to have crime either. They made dozens of arrests, and that's what starts to happen. Again, cashless bail. Watch what we do with that. Today, we're formally declaring a public safety emergency. This is an emergency. This is a tragic emergency. And it's embarrassing for me to be up here. You know, I'm going to see Putin. I'm going to Russia on Friday. I don't like being up here talking about how unsafe and how dirty and disgusting this once beautiful capital was, with graffiti all over the walls.
He means
It's
Alaska,
another part of it, by the way. Because we're talking about safety, but we're also talking about beautification. We have the most beautiful, potentially, capital in the world. We always had. But people come from Iowa, they come from Indiana, they come and then they get mugged. It's not going to happen. Keep coming, because by the time you get your trip set, it's going to be safe again, and it's going to be clean very quickly. We're going to replace the medians that are falling down all over the roads. We're going to replace the potholes. We're going to put a nice new coat of asphalt over the top. No, we don't have to rip the road out and spend 7 years building a new road because they cut everything. Because some designer said, well, we need a quarter of an inch more turn for safety reasons. No.
You can, bro, like, You can invest in improving infrastructure without having to militarize and mobilize the fucking National Guard. The National Guard doesn't know dick about building a road. You can do that without forcing everybody to live in a fucking police state. In fact, we should be doing more of that anyway. Yeah, fix the fucking pothole. Fix the roads. Repair some of these buildings, these dilapidated buildings. Give out loans to people so that way they can open up a fucking convenience store or something. Revitalize these communities. Beautify these communities. And I'm not talking about covering up graffiti because, like, who gives a fuck? No one, like, dude, realistically, no one gives a shit about whether graffiti exists or not. If you do, you're collecting Social Security. That's the only age demographic that looks at graffiti and is like, oh, that's disgusting. Meanwhile, graffiti is just free art for your fucking city. Graffiti artists are commissioned by cities all the time to do murals. It's graffiti artists that put up Kobe Bryant murals and Nipsey Hussle murals in Los Angeles. You can do things like that without turning, again, Washington, D.C. into North Korea.
We're going to do it right. We're going to get it done quickly. So today we're declaring public safety emergency in the District of Columbia. And Attorney General Pam Bondi, who's fantastic, is taking command of the Metropolitan Police Department as of this moment. And I'll be making the appropriate notifications to Congress and to the mayor, our new DEA administrator, who's one of the top in the country. He better be Terry. If you're not, I'm going to get rid of you so fast. Terry Cole. Terry, thanks. Very good.
Terry.
Just got him. Most highly recommended person.
I just got him. I just ordered him off of Temu. President G shipped him to me free of charge off of Temu.com. He's actually two children stacked on top of one another. That's why he's the dullest one here.
You'll be designated as the interim federal commissioner of the Metropolitan Police Department. Okay?
That's a made-up
job. And you run them tough. They're good. You have a lot of good people. You have people that shouldn't be there. You also have people that shouldn't be there. They got in there because of woke. But you have a lot of great police. And those people are the ones that want to help you.
Pamela, it was...
Checkmate libtards. Oh, yeah, all those people in the Metropolitan Police Department, they got in there because of woke, actually. Forget Indeed.com. They went to woke.com and got their job through there. The application, it only asked the one question. It said, are you woke? And they all checked off yes. They had to hit the woke quota, the WOTA, as I call it. You know, nowadays you need 2/3 of your workforce to be woke. Otherwise, you die. You can't do business if you don't have woke.
More than an hour, he started this news conference, and it's been going on and on, answering a bunch of questions.
Yeah, and this is significant because what he announced today is a federal takeover of D.C. police and deploying the National Guard. I mean, this is, as far as I know, unprecedented to hear it.
National Guard and potentially other U.S. military troops down the road.
Exactly, and he made it clear that this could just be the beginning, that it might not just be D.C., and I think that that is significant as well. And, of course, this is an extraordinary move by the president. I want to bring in our Brian Todd here. Brian, we're already getting reaction from D.C. council members.
We are.
I just want to make it abundantly clear. Actions like this will make Washington, D.C. significantly unsafer. First of all, a heightened police and military presence it doesn't do good for anybody. It adds unnecessary anxiety and tension to literally every fucking interaction. That is just merely their presence. Additionally, Donald Trump could very well direct the National Guard to do policing, which would be a fucking disaster because they're not equipped to do that. They're not trained to do policing. Police officers are the ones who receive training to do policing. And even they don't do the appropriate policing sometimes because they perhaps don't receive enough training. So you have these fucking soldiers walking around with M16s and fucking M4s. It's looking like the Division 3 or the Division 2. Actually, I guess the Division 2 predicted this seemingly. And they're just going to like start harassing minorities. Who is that safe for? Who is that safe for?
And Wolf, this coming into CNN from Councilmember Charles Allen of the 6th Ward in D.C. His post is, quote, the president taking over local control of MPD and putting the U.S. military onto the streets of D.C. under the guise of public safety is wrong. It's an extreme, outrageous, and dangerous move for our city and the safety of all of our residents. He's the first city council member to react to this whole thing. None of them had reacted really last week to this in any real measure. This is the first time a city council member has reacted and come out strongly on this. We're also reaching out to Mayor Muriel Bowser's office and the office of the Metropolitan Washington Police Department for their response. We started to reach out to them while this news conference was going on. No word back from them yet. The mayor has been fairly muted in her comments on this. She did speak out yesterday in an interview, but did not openly criticize the president for this. It's an extraordinary move. We have to point out, never before in American history has a U.S. president taken over control of the Metropolitan Washington, D.C. Police Department. How is this going to work on the streets? How is it going to work from a command and control standpoint? That is a huge, huge question. And of course, his threat to do this in other cities, we'll see how that plays out. I think you got to see how it really plays out here first.
Right, and we should also note that he talked about moving the homeless population in D.C., right. Thousands of people far away without offering those specifics.
He didn't say where they were.
Yeah, he's just going to liquefy them. He's going to Donald Trump is going to incinerate all of Washington, D.C.'s homeless people. Again, there are other ways that you can go about fixing these problems. If somebody is homeless, build them a fucking house. Hello? There you go. That's how you solve homelessness. You build affordable housing that people can actually afford. So that way, if they have a home and they have an address, they can go out and do things like open a bank account and apply for a job. There you go. There you go. Provide opportunity for people. But no, we can't fucking do that because guess what? That's woke and gay and that's non-binary legislation. And Donald Trump does not want non-binary legislation.
Going. I want to bring in our senior White House reporter, Kevin Liptak. Kevin, you've been monitoring this very, very closely. What jumps out at you?
Yeah, and I think the president's steps here to federalize the D.C. police force certainly very significant. What we didn't hear from the president was how long that would last. You know, the statute that he's using, the D.C. Home Rule Act, allows for initial federalization for 48 hours before notifying Congress. He said that he was doing that. So beyond that, we don't know exactly how long it would last. The other thing that stuck out was the president raising open the possibility that he would use active duty troops as part of this effort, saying that they would be ready as needed to join the National Guard to help support law enforcement in the city. And you really did hear the president paint quite a dystopian picture of Washington, D.C., saying that it was overtaken by violent gangs, by bloodthirsty criminals, using this imagery that doesn't necessarily comport with a lot of people's experience in this city, but also with what the actual numbers show. You know, statistics do show that violent crime in Washington is falling since reaching a peak in 2023. The president's aides dispute some of those figures. You heard the president come out saying that some of those statistics might have been cooked, but really when you look at the numbers, what the president is painting is an image that doesn't necessarily match up with what the figures show, but also with what a lot of people's experience in the city is. And so a significant step by the president certainly today.
You're more likely to be murdered in Oklahoma than New York City. This is just the reality of the situation. Objectively, it is safer to live in a blue city, one of these liberal hellscapes like Chicago or like New York or like LA or San Francisco, than it is to live in fucking Oklahoma or Florida. Are there pockets in these respective cities where crime is a little bit higher than average? Yes, but again, that tracks back to these communities being left behind by the state, local, and federal governments. It is these communities being impoverished and disenfranchised because of bad policy and because of decades-long bad policy. There are reasons as to why things happen. The conservative media makes it seem like everything that happens in isolation and that there is no correlation to anything that has happened before it. There will be no correlation to anything that happens after it. And even like events that happen simultaneously, they want you to believe that there's no correlation. That's not fucking true. That's not true. Crime exists because of poverty. Poverty exists because of the federal, state, and local governments refusing to properly reinvest in communities that have been ravaged by whatever economic factor that may be, whether it's outsourcing, whether it's not fixing redlining, whether it's not ever actually addressing segregation or Jim Crow. There are actual legitimate reasons for that. This approach that Donald Trump is doing, these conversations that they have on Fox News where Will Cain talks to Bob Woodson or whatever the fuck his name was, and he's talking about juvenile black crime without mentioning anything substantive. It's an unproductive conversation that is rooted just in racism. There's no other way. There's no other way to describe it. They're having these conversations on racial grounds, which is ironic because this is the same group of people who's like, why do liberals have to make everything about race? Like, buddy, why don't you talk about crime in West Virginia, in rural West Virginia, that is mostly white? Is there, you think that is just a fucking coincidence? It's because these people don't actually want to solve anything. They're content with how the system functions. So they're fine with the status quo because the status quo benefits them.
All right, Kevin Liptak at the White House for us. Kevin, thank you very, very much.
This is still an ongoing situation, of course. This is still an ongoing situation. Again, as the CNN anchor said, it's going to be interesting to see how the logistics and the operations of this pan out. It's going to be a disaster. I don't think I have to predict that. But more specifically, will Congress let Donald Trump do this? Will the Supreme Court let Donald Trump do this? I'm being facetious. Of course they're going to fucking let him do it. Like, what do you think this is? My first fucking day? You think I was born yesterday? No, they're going to let him do whatever the fuck they want. I'm more concerned about how the leadership in places like California, New York, and Chicago respond to this, because Donald Trump is coming. He's coming for New York. He's coming for LA. He's coming for Chicago. Gavin Newsom, Kathy Hochul, Eric Adams, Mayor Karen Bass, like, they have to be ready to fight against this. They have to be ready to use their statehood for the benefit of Washington, D.C. And then maybe like a couple years down the line, Washington, D.C. can become a state, because why the fuck is the nation's capital governed under a different set of rules? Like, that's just fucking stupid.